Hey, Los Angeles. How are you? Welcome to this new year. I'm joined today by my colleague, Kat Cobell.
Oh, hey, Will Murphy.
I guess it's the second webinar of the new year, right? I already welcomed you to the new year, but happy end of January. So it's over. Then we enter the shortest month of the year. I hope you're all excited for that. Today's Tech Talks is about some timecode topics, related things like that. We have some questions. Thanks for submitting those, and I suppose we could dive right in. I hope you also got to see the new support.aclighting.com dashboard. If you haven't been there, take a gander, support.actlighting.com, or you can click on the support tab of our homepage, which will actually take you here. If you check out the knowledge base, you'll find a whole lot of bulletins that you can search through, categorized, etc. Lots of information about all the products.
You can even type in timecode in that handy search bar right there.
Yeah, let's go back there. Let's search for timecode there. It's going to do a little searching. Oh, there's a lot of articles about timecode. So anyway, we're going to jump into timecode. What is it? Well, I think the first most important thing to note is timecode for the lighting guys, or was timecode for something else? Do you know the answer to that, Kat?
Is timecode for the lighting guys or for something else?
Where did it come from? Yeah, timecode has nothing to do with lighting. It didn't even start with lighting. So I'm going to play a little joke on you guys. There's this thing called, let me Google that for you. You could actually find a lot of information about timecode just by Googling the internet, because it's not an MA thing, it's not a lighting thing, it's from the movie industry. We just kind of took it for our own use because it is a clock synchronization signal. So the nice thing about Google, to give you a nice definition at the top, it's just a standard to label frames of video or film with timecode. It's defined by the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, SMPTE. Oh yeah, okay. So I've met a lot of people that have no idea what SMPTE stands for. It stands for Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. And they refer to it as metadata, but all this information is on the Google. I'd encourage you to read about it. One of the things that people have told me they never realized, timecode in lighting has a tendency to be sent on an XLR cable because it is being transported on an analog audio mechanism, for lack of better terminology that I can't think of right now. It's just an audio signal, an analog audio signal, but it's digitized. So if you look on the right side of this page, this is a digital signal, up, down, up, down. It's a whole bunch of zeros and ones that get interpreted by your timecode interpreter in your console into a clock signal. From generally, it's limited to 0 to 24 hours. I think there is some way to go over that, but not at least within the Grand MA2 system right now. But trying to put digital signal onto an analog cable tends to allow for noise, basically. And what happens is these square waves turns into crap waves, basically. They don't have sharp corners. There's a lot of noise at the top and the bottom. So that's why you tend to hear a lot of people complaining about having trouble with timecode, because one thing, it's got to be loud. Second thing, the receiving devices have to be able to differentiate the noise floor of the audio signal from the actual bottom trough of that digital signal. So that's one of the reasons we recommend a distripolizer. I'm going to totally spell this wrong. Thankfully, oh no, Google's not going to help me that time. You could all laugh at me for not remembering how to spell distripolizer. There's this device, there we go, made by Brainstorm Electronics. Just for the record, I'm trying to make timecode fun because it tends to be a little bit of a boring topic, so hopefully you can laugh at me for not knowing how to spell things. This distributalizer, what that does is that it has a better noise filtering mechanism. It can kind of find the timecode signal even if it's coming from a noisy audio line. The desk, on the other hand, is expecting, or the Grand MA2 desk is expecting a fairly clean square wave. So if your audio guy, is far away and you don't know where the signal's coming from, etc., we definitely recommend you get a distributalizer front of house. That actually has a little clock display on it. So then you're getting signal front of house. And if you're not getting it in the desk, at least you know it's front of house and that it's something in the desk. Whereas if you're just receiving a line from your audio guy, you don't know if it's noisy, you don't know if he's sending the right signal, all this stuff. So it's a good troubleshooting tool. And it also cleans up the timecode. It has a little audio booster in there as well. Let's look at that. Like I said, you go back to Wikipedia or Google. It'll tell you some things about timecode. You've probably noticed there's different frame rates. Well, the frame rates come about because of timecode is designed to associate with video frames. So if they're shooting the motion picture at 30 frames per second, they're going to use timecode that's 30 FPS. If they're shooting the motion picture at 25 frames per second, they're going to use timecode that's 25 FPS. Furthermore, you see that 25 FPS is a PAL thing. That's a European video standard, whereas in the United States we use NTSC, which is 2997. There's also this terminology called drop frame, non-drop frame, etc. The console can receive all of these formats. What you choose, I mean, we're just using the clock sync. We're not really trying to associate ourselves with frames of video. So what frame rate you use, I don't think is so important unless maybe you're in a broadcast environment, or you're shooting a commercial, or you're shooting a TV show, etc. At that point, they're going to send you whatever frame rate they want, and then you can link up cues to individual frames based on the frame rate that you choose. But all those are optional. I think most people I see that are just using general timecode to synchronize with the music are generally just going with 30. So you can keep that in mind. I hope that gave you a little bit of a background on timecode, where it comes from. It's just a clock sync, okay? So
that was a good fundamental discussion, Will.
Yeah?
I learned a lot.
That's good. That's the objective here. You can see right now that I actually have a signal coming in, timecode signal. I have a timecode generator. Generally, what would you say, Kat? It comes from the audio guy?
I say it always comes from the audio guy. At least I've always bugged my audio guys.
Timecode's almost always coming from the audio guy. In terms of fundamentals, I realized that I forgot something. The linear timecode, which is actually linked at the bottom of this article, we can take a look at that. That's the encoding of the SMPTE signal into an audio signal format, that analog audio that I talked about. There is another type of timecode called Midi timecode, which is transported via Midi cable. Midi in itself is a digital signal. Interestingly, though, Midi takes a tad bit longer to synchronize on the desk because it needs a few more pieces of information based on the way the timecode is encoded into a digital Midi format, where the analog it can synchronize just a little bit faster. Sometimes this matters. If you're doing a rock concert, I don't think it matters. But every now and then I've had calls. They say, what's the fastest way to synchronize the timecode? Tell them use linear timecode. But Midi timecode would use those 5-pin Midi ports on the back of your desk, whereas linear timecode uses the 3-pin XLR port. Keep in mind, 3-pin XLR port is on the back of the console. It's the RPU and the command wing. You cannot get linear timecode into an on-PC station unless you have a command wing. Okay, the only way to get timecode into the on-PC without a command wing is using Midi timecode. And at that point, you could get this box from, I think JL Cooper makes one. There's probably a couple others where they have a converter that can convert linear timecode into MIDI timecode. And then you have to use a USB to MIDI adapter to get it into the on-PC software via these options up here where you link up your MIDI input device. But in this case, in my setup, I'm using on PC. I have a command wing. I'm sending a 3-pin XLR signal into the command wing, which is transporting it into my on PC. Okay, and that signal right there is 2 hours, 11 minutes, 53 seconds, and it's coming in. The generator is transmitting at 30 frames per second. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this link up to the timecode slot. If I see I have a timecode show here, if I say go, you can see that timecode show is not listening. I didn't set that. That was set to internal. Sorry, I'd have to link that up with the options. You'd have to tell that to listen to slot 1. And now this timecode show is playing, therefore it's linked up to timecode slot 1, which is linked up to my SMPTE generator. If I turn that off, it's not listening anymore. If I hit go, it's listening again. If I turn off my external source, aka the audio guy, stops the signal, you see that it goes away. The audio guy starts the signal again. The way my little test generator works here is it always restarts at the 2-hour mark. Depending on what you use is up to you. Now you've probably heard of people generating this signal from their iPhone or their computer. Yeah, timecode is an audio signal. You can generate it from your iPhone or your computer, but a lot of times it's not quite strong enough because your iPhone or your computer is designed for headphones. Console has a tendency to expect just a slightly louder signal. You know, in my little test room at home, I just use a little headphone amplifier. I wouldn't really recommend that for a show, which is why I say for a real show, critical situations, get that distributalizer. All right, anyway, is it getting too boring yet?
I don't think so. I think timecode is fun. I don't know about you. I don't know why you're bored.
I don't know. It's just a lot. It's a lot to throw at you. But that's why, you know, take lots of notes quickly. Hopefully the recording works out and we can get that on the YouTube channel as well. Okay, so next step. We have these things called timecode slots. Think of those. That's the first order of business here of how to actually get timecode into your system. Think of timecode slots as the opposite of a DMX port. Okay. What I mean by that is that you know, you have a DMX port on the back of your console. You're like, hey, I want this to be DMX Universe port. I want XLR-B to be, you know, DMX Universe 40. Oh, look, you have that DMX input port, right? So that's instead of DMX going out, DMX coming in. You know, I want the DMX coming into Universe 10. All right? Timecode slots, like I said, it's kind of like DMX. There's the SMPTE 3-pin XLR port on the back, and there's the Midi port for timecode. I want the incoming signal, timecode signal plugged into that 3-pin port. I want that to associate itself with timecode slot 3 or 1 or 7 in the system. So right now it's timecode slot 1, which is why you see this little counter for the slot right there counting, because the incoming port on my command wing is set to timecode slot 1, or on my console is set to timecode slot 1. I'm going to change this to timecode slot 3. So now the physical port, any data coming in, any signal coming in, is mapping itself to timecode slot 3 in the software. So now this counter stopped. This counter is the one that's running because that's what the signal is coming into. Now the point of this, when you only have one timecode feed, doesn't really matter. Everything's with slot 1. But in bigger shows, theme parks, big systems, festivals, all the above, maybe you have different timecode sources. So console 1 might be slot 1, console 2 is slot 2, console 3 is slot 3. Everybody has access to that signal, just like every device in the system has access to the universes. Everybody has access to that signal. Sometimes the guy front of house, he has his little computer, he's doing some previs, he's generating timecode from his computer. So in that case, he has his slot. He's slot 8 plugged into the desk, but his backup desk is plugged into the Pro Tools guy. So what that means is they can select different slots to change which ones actually mapped to their timecode shows. In the timecode shows, you tell the timecode show to listen to the slot or link to the selected slot. So if I say selected slot, I want to play the timecode show so it's playing. See, it's running. Oh, pick a different slot. It's not running. It's listening to slot 2. Slot 2 is not doing anything. It's listening to slot 1. Slot 1's not running because this show, this timecode show, was set to listen to my selected slot. So the slot 1 might be from Pro Tools, the audio guy. Slot 3 might be the local, my computer playing it for my previs purposes. Whoa.
That's
you follow that?
Slots are a lot, man. That's
The thing to remember, you guys all know this, because you already know universes and DM exports. It's just the opposite. Instead of sending a signal out, coming in. Right? Instead of you telling a fixture to do something that's on that universe, you're telling this timecode show to listen to a particular slot. And it's these options right here where I can force this timecode show to listen to a particular slot, or I can link it to the selected. So this is really the first order of business. You got to try to get your timecode in. I'm going to go back. I want my command wing actually to be assigned to slot 1. And now slot 1 is playing. I'm going to select that so my timecode show is listening. Did any questions happen to pop up before I jump into the next thing? You noticed anything about slots? So what I was saying here?
Yeah, what happens if two consoles have their ports set to the same slot and the signals aren't synced?
Well, this the beauty of the system, that's actually what you should do in a main and backup situation. Both desks should be set to the same timecode slot, and you should send the same timecode feed to both desks. I bet you can guess why. The system latches onto the signal based on a first-come, first-served basis. So if the first signal that it detects, whether you send them at the same time, there's microsecond differences, it'll synchronize to one of them first. Let's say the first signal is detected on your backup desk, so that's the one it's going to latch onto. That's the so-called the source of the timecode for the system. If that desk were to crap out or crash or whatever, you want your backup, you want your other desk to take over. So that's the whole point of splitting the timecode feed. That's the beauty of the distributilizer. The distributilizer has multiple outputs. So you'll have one timecode feed from your audio guy, but you're going to split it, run one to each desk. Both desks are going to be set to the same slot, so that if one of your desks dies in the middle of a show, the other desk latches onto that same signal, and the show goes on without a hitch. So if you actually try to send, just to answer your question a little further, I think, if you actually try to, if you have both desks set to slot 1, and you send 2 different clock signals, it's only going to latch onto one of those, and as long as that signal is valid, it's going to stay locked onto that one, regardless of what the other one is doing, until the signal drops out on that first one. There's like I want to say there's like a 1-second timeout.
It's like a first takes precedence, though, you're saying.
Yeah.
It's going to listen to the first one.
First come, first serve, wherever it detects the signal first. And like I said, in your eyes, you might be splitting the signal and it's coming exactly at the same time, but in computer language, there's microsecond differences. One of those is technically first.
Cool. And I think there seems to be some confusion over slots. So I have a question here, which is where would slot 2 be physically located since there's only one XLR input?
On another desk, on another device.
All right, there we go.
All right, so you can have 15 consoles. I mean, technically 30 consoles. Nobody's really going to do that, but the network tests are done with 15 consoles. There's only 8 slots available in the system, so if you had 15 consoles, it'd be slot 1 through 8. And remember, your Midi port can have a different slot. So there's the XLR, the SMPTE XLR port, and there's the Midi port. So that's 2 timecode slots right there if you want to have 2 different signals. Next desk is slot 3 and 4. Next desk is 5 and 6. Remember, most situations, if you only have one timecode feed, everybody's going to be set to the same slot. You're never going to separate them. Same way that you can have multiple DMX ports set to the same universe. But it's the opposite. Instead of you taking universes and sending data out, you're bringing a signal into the system. It's associating itself with a slot right here. Clock is running, and then your timecode shows decide which clock signals they want to latch onto.
I got a quick one for you, Will. What's the little green dot doing?
The little ticker?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just says that something's running.
All right then.
I think
that's a ticker. That's a good word for it. How about we start talking about pools?
Yeah.
We have one, and we should see what it does.
The actual timecode shows in themselves, you're actually looking at one right here. It's a timeline. It could go on for 24 hours. Yeah, I can zoom out so far I can't even see anymore. So this particular show, I started at 0. What I'm going to actually do, since my little timecode generator over here starts at 2 hours, I'm going to set the length of my show to 3 hours. And then I'm going to edit this show. That guy with it. Put my face over there. We're going to create a selection. We're going to select all the events, and then we're going to move them to 2 hours. Okay, if you go to text view, you can see I have events at 2 hours, 2 hours and 13 seconds, 17 seconds, 26, etc. So if I were to hit go on that, this timecode show is on. It's associated with timecode slot 1, but timecode slot 1 has no signal coming in at the moment. You can see because that little ticker is stopped. As soon as the audio guy hits go, you can see the little ticker starts and the timecode show is listening. I'm going to hit this clock signal to follow along, and you can see my little ticker is going along on my timecode viewer. As soon as I hit an event, it's going to trigger the queue. And you see on the bottom left, it just triggered Q4, and as we hit Q5, it's going to trigger Q5. And little arrows, the right arrows, there's a bunch of different symbols for all of this. The little right arrows are time to be go. This final one, I'm pretty sure it's going to be an off, so it's actually going to turn off that timecode list. Now, remember, timecode was created by the Society of Motion Pictures, right? So the best way to think about this is it's a cassette tape, or it's a VHS tape. I know none of us really know what those are anymore, but they did exist at a time, and that was, it was a tape. It was a timeline. And at certain times, you'd see pictures on the screen, or in this case, at certain times, we're actually triggering events, okay? And we're associating an event with a particular time and space. So I think if I go back to this editor, you can see a particular time and space is 2 hours, 13 seconds, and 47 milliseconds. Now, the way I'm looking at my data right now is based on a time unit of 1/100th of a second, but we talked about frames, and my timecode generator is sending at 30 frames per second. So it would be a lot easier to view this data in terms of frames. So the actual Q2 is being triggered at the 13-second mark, frame 14. Q3 is being triggered at the 13-second mark, frame 26. So just think of this big long cassette tape. Whatever clock signal comes in, when that clock matches an event, it triggers that. Are you understanding this, Kat?
I think where the confusion in timecode lies is you're not creating a show with it. Your show is already created, and you're simply triggering from that timecode.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people tend to go like, how do I use timecode, or when do I use timecode? And it's just you build your show, and then you, instead of physically hitting your go button, your timecode is getting down to the frame with your timing.
Yep. It's just a replacement for your finger.
Yeah.
You know, these little events that you see here, they're replacements for your finger. So we edited this time code, right? I could come in here and you know, type in 2 hours 13 seconds frame 27. Yeah. 2 hours 17 seconds frame 25. Could be a little boring, especially if you have a lot of cues. 5 cues, yeah, maybe I'd type it all in. But with a lot of cues, I'm going to want to record my timecode show. So I just want to show you timecode recording. How would I set this up? So we have to start with a new timecode object. So we edit that. In the options, we have to tell it, oh, I'm either listening to the link selected or the timecode slot. Internal is just like an internal VCR playhead. So we're listening to timecode slot. I want to use units 30 frames per second. And those are the settings we start with. Now my little editor window is open here. Let me see what happens. I'll toss that up to the big screen. Yeah, so good news. I can still have the editor open, and at least with on PC, so you guys can see, I have my executors here. Now on your console, you'd actually be hitting the actual go button. I'm going to click this go button for you so you can see what's happening. We're going to start by hitting record, but the little ticker doesn't move. The little ticker is not moving because it's linked to timecode slot 1, and timecode slot 1 is not running, so nothing's happening. As soon as I get a signal from my audio guy, now I'm in record mode. I'm running along here. So now what's happening is it's waiting for me to trigger cues. So I'm going to hit go, and you see the executor shows up. So I hit go again, maybe 2 quick hits right there, and then I get the final one. And you could do goes and toggles and flashes and all the above, and we turn that off. Now I'm done recording, so I hit stop. Now you see all the events show up. If you go to the graphical view, there's a zoom to fit button, which will show you from the first event to the last event. You can see where I have the first trigger hit. It recorded the position of my fader, which is nice. I'll show you that one next. And you see all the events here. Now, what would happen is I'm going to go into play mode. We see a little ticker running, and I'm going to ask my audio guy to reset the time code to start from the top. So now the little ticker's running, and I'm in play mode, which means when I hit this first event, it's going to trigger my cue. So Q1 went. Now I'm going to hit 2 events in order. Cool. So that's good so far. What tends to happen is you might want to edit these events. So this is where you can use your encoders. I use the zoom to fit button. So this is how you actually move your little ticker manually. You also select different tracks. So we want to work on the first track, not the second one. We want to work on the first track, and we want to grab a particular event. I'm going to roll my encoder to latch on to, there we go, number 2, and then my fourth encoder is how I actually move that. Now you can see the little ticker at the top tells me where I'm moving it. So maybe it was supposed to trigger, maybe I hit my finger, I was, 5 frames late, so I'm going to move that 5 frames up. And then you go to the next one, and it's supposed to be really frame 29 is probably better. Now I'm going to go back to play mode. I'm going to ask my audio guy to start from the top. I'm going to hit rewind, and I'll hit play. So now I'm listening. As soon as my audio guy sends me the signal, I'm playing again, and now I can watch my events in the new place trigger. So you have to use those 4 encoders.
Hey Will, can I move those tracks around while I'm receiving timecode? I'm playing back?
Yeah. Yay, look at number 4, it's jiggling. Yeah, as long as they're in green, the green, you notice the little object itself is in green while this editor is open. If that little object is in green, that means it's selected, which means you can use the 4th encoder. But if you have really tight events right here, be careful because it's automatically going to jump to the next one while you're moving. All of this is actually outlined really well. I'd encourage you to visit the help page. Timecode editor right here talks all about it. Gives you a full rundown on all the settings. And what I did is I had searched for timecode. Just search for timecode, the toolbar. This tells you about those 4 encoders, how they work, how to use them. Go to timecode editor. It is actually outlined pretty well in the manual. I think back in the day, that's how I learned it, actually. So it was just the manual. So I mean, that's the fundamentals of timecode. You record stuff in. Now, the other thing I mentioned, we do a little recording with fader level, which I think is kind of fun. I'm going to put this channel at 100. I'm going to store it to this executor, and you see I can run my fader up and down. We'll just put that at 0 so there's no fade time. So stop that. We're going to edit this next timecode object. I'm going to show you what happens with 2 executors, and that 1 executor, I'm going to run that fader up and down. So the editor's open. We start off with off. We go into record mode. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? What I forgot to do? I didn't do all my settings. You got to go do your settings first. Timecode slot, 30 FPS. Okay. Go into record mode. Tell my audio guy to start signaling the signal. Good, good. I need to trigger this cue. I want to trigger that cue. And now I'm going to run my fader up and down. Oh, yeah. I don't know what I'm bouncing it to, but we're going to do that. Okay. And we go to the next cue. Now we want to turn that off. We're going to turn that off. You see I got 2 tracks there. Every time you hit an executor, it adds the track. It adds the event. Zoom to fit. Oh, you see all the fader movements. So what happens when we play that back? Well, we're hitting play. Oh, I got to tell my audio guy to reset it. Okay. You see a trend here? Reminding you of where timecode's coming from. Now, if you're generating from your own computer, you'd obviously be in control of this. But watch this fader. This fader goes up and down on its own because it's following along. Yeah. Now, that fader movement was really fast. Maybe not so good for the motors on your desk. So if you're doing a lot of that kind of manual movement in your timecode shows, yeah, of course, use the real faders to record it. But after the fact, I wouldn't be on that page. It's just kind of hard on the motors. If they don't keep up, maybe it affects your output. Just put those things on a screen. You know how to put faders on a screen? Maybe you don't. I'll show you real quick. I want to go playback, big. There you go. And if I reset my timecode, tell my audio guy to send it again, I should see that fader bouncing up and down like crazy. Oh yeah. Looks fancy. Fancy. I love it. And Cat's laughing at me.
Hey, you wanted to make it fun. That was fun.
Oh, it's good.
Hey, Will, how would you set up your timecode tracks? Are you going to do it just one giant timecode, or are you going to do one per song?
Oh, yeah.
What are the best practices?
Definitely want to do one timecode per song. 2 different approaches. It's up to your audio guy to decide how he wants to send it to you. Some audio guys will send you from 0 second up to, you know, whatever, how long the song, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's one approach. Another approach is audio guys always use a different set of time. So song 1 would be 10 to 20 minutes. Song 2 is 20 to 30 minutes. Song 3 is 30 to 40. Sometimes they use 10 hours. Doesn't really matter what they use. It's just different approaches. But you're always going to use a different timecode show. That's why I'm showing you what it's like to select different timecode shows. That's why I'm showing you how to link. That's why I'm recording different ones. You're usually doing a different page per song, therefore you get a different timecode show per song. And in your page change macro that you might be using, you can see, I guess, we're eating up a lot of time here because timecode can be a long-winded subject, but hopefully you get all the basics, keep diving in, keep learning, try it out. In your page change macro, you might do page 10, select executor 10.1, off page 1 through 9. Then you want to make sure to off timecode 1 through. And actually, I did this in the wrong order. Before you off all your pages, you should actually off your timecode first, because your timecode can actually restart your executors.
Can there be multiple timecodes playing, Will?
Yep, all of them. All of them can be playing. That would be a little weird, though, because then you'd have executors running on all pages. I don't know if you want to do that. So you go to page 10, you select executor 10.1, maybe off timecode should go at the top. Different orders. It's just a matter of how you program your show. How do you want the workflow to look? Make sure you rewind your timecode shows. It's always good to get them at the beginning. And then since maybe timecode 10 is associated with the page song on page 10, you would say go timecode 10. Now that object is waiting for that signal from the audio guy, so when the audio guy hits go, your song starts playing. Put a little weight in here, 0.03 is good.
Hey Will, does a queue have to have timecode set to trigger does a queue have to have the trigger set to timecode in order to be controlled?
Very good question, but did you see me do any of that? No. Therefore, no. Timecode tells executors to run. So there's no disabling on a per queue basis. Disabling on a per queue basis would be leave the actual queue out of this list of triggered objects. So if you didn't want Q2 to be triggered, leave it out. I had another thing I was going to say about that. If you don't want if you do have an executor that you want to manually run, but you don't want it in your timecode, you have to put it in there first. And I'll show you that. If we go back to this timecode editor, we'll go to record. We'll just hit go on that first one. Okay. It added this track in here. We actually don't want that part of the playback, and we don't want to record that in. So you do have to add the executor in. At that point, we did go into the text view for uncheck these, so I just see this track, and we would delete that. I mean, it's not part of the playback anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's in there, but that's what these little checkboxes do, and then that's what these symbols are for. You click on them to cross them out. Don't record or don't play. These little checkboxes dictate whether you see the event in the text view.
What about if I have multiple users in my session, Will? What if I don't want to record the other user's desk?
Yeah, every executor that's played back is technically by default included in the timecode recording while you're recording, but we do have this setting that says timecode by user. I'm not going to remember where that is. Do you remember where it is, Kat?
No, I just know that it's a setting. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, there's a setting in here somewhere that says, there we go, playback and MIB time, and timecode record single user. So when this is on, this means that the person that actually enabled recording of that timecode is the only one that can put executors in. So user will starts recording, any executors that user will hits gets recorded, but any executors that cat hits do not get recorded. By default, this is off. That means any executor triggered back during the recording phase gets included in the timecode show, which is common because you usually have the lighting and the video guy. And during when the audio guy hits, go on timecode, and the video and lighting guy are trying to record their playbacks into the timecode, yeah, you want them all recording. So you leave that off. But that setting does exist. Okay, we get a couple more questions.
Can you trigger macros, commands, or Lua via timecode other than inserting them in queues?
You can trigger executors and queues in a timecode, which means if you want to trigger macros and command line, you have to put the command links into the queues and then trigger the queues with the timecode.
Sorry, there's quite a few questions here.
I know, just keep rolling.
I know.
I can be quick. Keeps it interesting.
All right, I think you already answered that. Once I build a timecode, how do I speed it up or slow it down if it gets out of sync with the performance? I've heard that question a lot, actually.
Yeah, that's not really any functionality that's available.
Yeah, that's, again, not coming from us.
Yeah, that goes back, actually, to timecode's not a lighting guy thing, all right? Who's responsible for speeding up and slowing down a track? The band, a.k.a. their audio guy. Maybe AK is not the right term, but who's most connected to the sound and what the band is doing is the audio guy. So yeah, most audio guys are responsible for the timecode track, and they are responsible for speeding it up and slowing it down if the band gets ahead or behind. Also, if the band goes off on a tangent in the middle of a song, that happens, the audio guy will pause it, and you as the lighting guy have to be ready to take over and flash some lights manually for a while until that restarts. So this is having some synergy between you and your sound guy.
Well, how do you use the internal timecode, and what do you use the internal timecode for? And does it generate timecode? Hey, that's actually a good question.
Yeah, so this was originally set to internal. That's a local timecode show clock. So let's just go. So what you do with it is up to you. If I want to create a really cool kind of set of cues and I want to be able to play them back and have them look the same every single time and don't want to base it off, follows and chasers and all that stuff, just record it into a timecode show, adjust the object location, and you just hit go on your timecode show that's internally per the show. So it's just another playback tool. Furthermore, if you're trying to do some troubleshooting, these timecode slots actually can generate a signal. So if I hit play, there's this little symbol that shows up to say that it's internally generated, and now anybody that's set to listen to that. So that's good for like you're in rehearsal, the audio guy's gone, and you just want to see what it looks like. And you can actually set the start point. So by default, it's at 0. If I want it to start at 2 hours every time, I can just set the start point. So when I rewind, it's always starting at 2 hours. And then when I bring the external signal in, it takes control and I get the different symbol. So you see this is like the actual SMPTE real symbol. Whereas if I hit go, I get like locally generated, and then you have the internal per show. So you got 3 different options. There are options that exist. There's a ton of applications. It's just a matter of what situation you're in. If you need to generate some timecode, hey, you can do it. Now, keep in mind, we cannot output it. It doesn't output from the system. You can actually do that with a VPU. Since our VPU can generate audio signal, you could have a WAV file in your VPU that could play back from the audio ports on a VPU. But you'd have to get a VPU to do that.
Hey, Will, what is pre-roll and after-roll?
Pre-roll would be how long do you want to wait? How long do you want to wait before we latch on to the signal? So if I set this to 5 seconds, that's too long. Set this to 2 seconds. I hit go on my timecode generator. 1, 2, okay, it latched on. Now you see how long that took? If I set it to 4, pre-roll is how long I hit go on my generator. 1, 2, 3, 4. Latch is on. So you're setting how long you want to wait before you latch on. It's how long you want to give the system time to really recognize and make sure you have a valid signal. Normally it's 0.5. Even if you set this lower, I think the lowest is 0.1. It's still going to take about a half a second to latch on just because of the nature of timecode signal. After roll is how long do I keep running even after I lose timecode signal. So normally it's instantaneous, but if I set this to 4 seconds, I hit stop on my timecode generator, it's still running for 4 seconds, and then it goes away. What that does is it accounts for somebody jiggling the cable, random interference from cell phones, whatever else can go wrong on show site. Some people accidentally make the mistake of setting this forever, and then suddenly you turn off timecode and it never stops. So don't make that mistake. That's always a funny phone call. They're like, timecode won't stop. I'm like, well, why'd you say your after roll is 24 days? I don't know, because I didn't know what it was for. Like, so why'd you change it? Yeah, that's always a good one.
I think that's time, Will. That's a lot of good info on timecode.
Yeah, good starting place. Yeah. I think the most important thing, use the Google. And by the way, all that after roll, pre-roll slot settings are all in here as well. It's the same as editing that object itself. But keep in mind, search the Google, read about SMPTE, read about linear timecode, read about Midi timecode, MTC, read about it. It's all out there. It came about before lighting. You learn all about it. Then jump into the help manual, search for timecode. You're going to find stuff on the timecode editor, the timecode toolbar, the timecode views that exist. Read the release notes related to slots. I think we put slots in 3.1, so to contain slots, you can read all about slots in there. And you check out support.aclighting.com, and you can get a list of all of our articles related to timecode. And this funny feature, I can actually chat you these little links if you would like. So there's the release notes. The release notes for 3.1, where you can find out about slots, and then you can just search for timecode. And I think we were looking at this Wikipedia article. Chat those over to you guys. Copy those out. And everybody asked about the distributalizer. So
there is a question about how we're currently generating timecode as well.
How we're just currently generating timecode? I have this test device from JL Cooper Electronics called a PPS 100. This is just a testing device. It's not a whole ton of help when it comes to writing your timecode show, because we can generate it from within the system right here. So what my little device does is now built into the system. But for the webinar, if I relied on what's internal, you guys would have been totally confused. So my little thing, I'm pretending there's an audio guy over there. Cool?
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure, you guys. I hope you get a little more sense of timecode now. Just because it exists doesn't mean you have to use it, so choose wisely. Happy programming.
Happy programming.